make sure it's like this.
What you got, Majin?
The key here is that like the Ponder actually gains you additional information.
Ooh, what is that?
It's bone fusion.
Okay, wait, don't look at it. Tell me what the card does.
It blocks.
Well, I work hard. How come everybody wants to shuffle my cards? And I think that it's true. There's nothing of importance on the 6 o'clock news, and I believe that it's time to rally all the people with their free thinking minds, and we'll say,
Step into Kayfabe Cards, your ultimate destinations for all things tabletop in Riverton, Utah. Uniting enthusiasts under one roof, we proudly showcase Flesh and Blood, Pokemon, Magic, Weiss, and One Piece, a gateway into an exhilarating universe of gaming. Immerse yourselves in our diverse products, including a very squishy array of Japanese plushies and the excitement of Gashapon machines. Our expansive play area invites you to duel in epic battles and forge unbreakable bonds with your fellow players. We open our doors every day at noon, embracing a realm where cards come alive and unforgettable moments are forged. Come join us at Kayfabe Cards.
The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes back a good friend of mine and a card game savant is what I'll say this time. I was struggling for how to do the descriptor this time, Majin, but that's what we got. He consistently attains the #1 rank on the Legends of Runeterra competitive ladder and most recently won the Realm Brawl in Salt Lake City. Welcome back to the show, Kules Van Patten, a.k.a. MajiinBae.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here. I'm glad a lot of people now think my name is Kules.
Can you just sort of add the little context to this? Because I know who Kules is, but a lot of people might not know who Kules is.
So my name's Caleb, and I got an airline credit card, and on it, instead of Caleb, they put Kules, which is, I don't know why they did that, because it's connected to my bank account. So, like, they know my name. They have my information. It's connected to my bank account. And then I booked a flight with it because obviously it's my airline credit card, and I never checked the actual name. And then I showed up to the airport, and they're like, "Yeah, we can't let you on this flight." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they go, "Well, this ticket's for Kules, not Caleb." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And so that's what happened. That's why people call me Kules, and they think it's funny. It is funny, but
well, when you busted that one out at a restaurant, you're like, "Oh yeah, look at this," and I laughed, and then I sat down at a keyboard, and I was like, maybe it was just like a typo, and the U and the A are like a $4 Uber ride apart, like they're nowhere close. I don't know why, but ultimately it just made me laugh that Kules, aka MajiinBae, is here with us on the show, and I want to get one thing out of the way. First of all, congratulations on winning the Realm Brawl. Never in doubt, I'll say. Maybe slightly in doubt.
Just a little bit in doubt.
Just a little bit here and there. But right immediately afterwards, we were going out for dinner, right? A lot of Team Kayfabe, some friends of ours were heading out to dinner. We're going to the car and figuring stuff out. You were immediately queuing into what?
The Legends of Runeterra World Qualifier.
Just casually, because you showed up to the event in Salt Lake City having, I guess, recently attained the #1 competitive ladder rank.
Yeah, it's not as big of a deal as it sounds, but that did happen.
Well, the person who's in #2 is now hearing this and just saying, this schmuck ass who just said it's just no big deal. Meanwhile, I've been spending, you do this casually, like literally at dinners, on the toilet, just casually getting in the #1 rank. And here you are on an escalator going downstairs to the parking garage saying, basically, I might still have a chance to qualify for the World Freaking Championships after you just win the Realm Brawl.
I did not. If it makes anyone feel better, I did not make it.
So
but I tried.
Well, you definitely tried. It's just fascinating. But that escalator was not your only endeavor, right? When it comes to these random sort of back alley qualifying missions that you've had. What's the weirdest or most obscure scenario where you've sort of tried to compete for something?
So there was one at TwitchCon where I was playing day 2. So I was in Top Cut, playing for qualifications. and I would have to sprint around the convention center in San Diego to try to find enough Wi-Fi to play my games. So I would be standing in a convention hall of like thousands of people, standing one spot playing my game, lose connection, and I would literally just be sprinting around the convention like this. trying to get enough service to play my next move. And that's how I played like the top cut of this tournament. Just running around.
Did you make it?
I top 8'd.
It's just so people maybe I mean like this is the thing, right? Because for some people things are just easy and some things come, I don't want to say come easy, but it's just natural. You see the lines. It's just natural talent. These things exist. Whereas I just think of the dude who has literally grinded probably 14 to 15 hours a day trying to get into something, and they're so thrilled that they made day 2. Meanwhile, you're like making an order for like a drink order at like an Applebee's, and you know, missing a turn because you needed, you know, another round of shrimp poppers or something, and you still get to cruise into a top 8 like that.
Yeah, I feel that does happen a decent chunk. But I do try hard, right? It's not like I do try hard. Yeah. Were you keeping up with the one in France?
Well,
Was
Yost there?
Yeah, Yost was live tweeting my run.
Yeah,
and it was like 5 a.m. in France, post Pro Tour.
Well, yeah, because okay, so again, you know, 5 a.m. in France. You're trying to like sort of wrap up something that was happening essentially the day before. You're up till 5 a.m. going from where? Was it like hotel room to hotel room, or where were you playing?
Yeah, so it was like we needed to get food. So I finished. I was like, good game. My last Pro Tour game. I think it may have been Hayden Dale that I played in the last match. And then I pulled out my phone, queued in, and started. Like I had like 15 minutes before like my match started. And Austin Yost and I were like, let's go get some food. So we go to a restaurant, and then we find out that this restaurant doesn't have Wi-Fi, and I don't have internet service here in France. So we had to like call around to a couple places. I was playing on like I was using like Yost's hotspot or something because he had internet to play, and then Yost was like calling restaurants to see if they had Wi-Fi, and then we like ran to a restaurant that had Wi-Fi, sat down, started eating, and I'm like playing my matches, and then we had to time it. We couldn't leave the restaurant until like my match finished, and then we went back to the hotel, and then yeah, we just like stayed up. And we had like the table was so funny because it's just us two in this like small hotel room, and it's just me trying to stay awake to play my matches. And there's like 6 empty energy drinks on the table. The worst part wasn't playing the games. The worst part was you play your game, you'd finish in 30 minutes, and there'd be 30 more minutes until your next round started. But it's 4:30 in the morning.
Sure.
And you just played an entire Pro Tour. Like I'm so tired.
This is the
But
glamorous world of competitive card gamers that I think a lot of people don't immediately latch onto, where if you know having this natural talent and wanting to use it properly is exciting, but then this is the trade-off. It's like you're too good, you're qualifying for too many tournaments, Caleb. Like you gotta tone it down. Like learn to build birdhouses or something. Like have a hobby that doesn't cue into other people, but at the same time, like it's a talent and you're successful at it. And winning the Realm Brawl, and then, you know, like for example, the perfect example, like you said, qualifying for one tournament, being number 1 on the ladder, winning another tournament, being at Pro Tour while trying to do something else. You have a skill set of playing Flesh and Blood. You have a skill set of playing Legends of Runeterra. One of the questions from Techlo Crow says, you're obviously very successful in both Legends of Runeterra and Flesh and Blood. What skills do you think are transferable between these two games? And, you know, I think I've asked you this before, but now that you're even more successful, you have more tournament wins, you have more experience in Flesh and Blood, as well as continuing to be successful in competitive Legends of Runeterra. Are you borrowing more things from both skill sets?
Probably. But I think you asked me this before, and I think I gave somewhat of the same answer. I would say like the biggest thing that I pull from each game is like the importance of having a plan in each matchup, in each micro decision, in each macro decision. Like all of my plays are trying to like lead into something else. They're trying to like fit my grand plan of how I want this game to go. And that is something that I learned in Runeterra, actually, because Magic's kind of easy. Sorry, Magic players.
No, man.
But like
that's my hook. That's my clip that I'm putting on Twitter for sure.
do it. Magic's an easy game. Once you start getting into like legacy format and deeper into like more eternal formats, Magic gets really interesting. But like if you're playing standard Magic, you just cast your cards on curve and you win 70% of your games. Like it's really simple. I really like Eternal Magic though. I think Eternal Magic is incredibly interesting. But that was something I really struggled with because I was like a good Magic player. I was like Pro Tour player and stuff like that. And then I switched to Legends of Runeterra. Magic was my first card game. Switched to Legends of Runeterra, and all of a sudden you just like couldn't cast your stuff on curve anymore. Because if you just like cast your stuff on curve and you just spend all your mana every turn, you just lose. It was enough to get me to like Masters because I was a decent card game player, and then that was it. I was just like hard stuck 0 LP Masters, and I was like, what's going on? And learning some things like, hey, you have to have like, when you see a matchup, you can't just like play what's on board. You have to be like, okay, what does my opponent need to have happen for them to win this game? What do I need to have happen for me to win this game? What steps, what plays push the game towards the position that I needed to be in, right? Things like that. And I took that from Legend of Runeterra to Flesh and Blood, and that has done very well for me. And I think it's more important in Flesh and Blood than in any other card game I've ever played because you make so many micro decisions, and it can be pretty easy. I think especially for like newer players to kind of get lost in the sauce, a little bit lost in the weeds. There's like a lot of things going on. You know, is it more important to block 6 damage, or is it more important to attack for 6? Well, it depends on what's it depends on the matchup. It depends on all sorts of different factors. And I think that's probably like the biggest thing that I take with me from card game to card game.
It's a good thing to have, and oftentimes when I'm preparing or I have the luxury of being able to practice with some world-class players. I would not say I'm necessarily at that level, but being able to practice and learn from people like yourself and the other great players that we get to play with, Team Kayfabe specifically, it's like one thing that I've noted is it's initial deck design is one thing. The other thing, or like choosing the deck is one thing. The other thing is tailoring it and the sideboard. The other thing after that is knowing how your deck and your sideboard decisions are played against a particular hero, because it's not always about being aggressive or defensive. Sometimes these things change, and depending on what your opponent does as well. And that is a skill set in itself, is the discipline that it takes to adhere to those game plans. And the Realm Brawl, you yourself, having walked into that on Iyslander, it was always going to be a wizard, right? Like, there's no question about
Always.
it.
Yeah.
But you chose Iyslander, a hero that you've had exceptional amounts of success with. I would argue that across the entire planet Earth, you're probably one of the top 5 Iyslander players. And I think it's even with your humility, you're going to agree to that, right?
I would give you 5. I would give you the 5th spot.
That's fine. It's okay.
But that's it.
But still, I mean, those juggle around. But ultimately, your familiarity with the hero, does that circumvent sometimes meta decisions? Like, for example, if Iyslander might not be a tier 1 hero at a particular time, maybe it's tier 1.5 or 2. Do you just shore that up with experience and knowing that you're the best at that hero in a particular room? Or do you ever think that eventually you're going to come off of it just to make a smarter meta-related decision? So
every time I come off of something I like and am good at to play a smarter meta decision, it goes poorly. This happened at this last Pro Tour where I ended up playing Lexi because I think it was the best deck in the field, and I still think that. And I 0-4'd the Pro Tour. Quite possibly the unluckiest day of card games I've ever had. But like, that's beside the point. It went poorly. I have like, if you made like an RPG character of me, my like, you know how when you like pick a race and they have like racial bonuses, my like racial bonus would be like plus some absurd amount, like plus 30% power if playing a deck he likes, minus 30% power if playing a deck he doesn't like. It's like, if I play a deck that I'm not having a super good time with, like I don't win, like period. just doesn't happen.
I like agree. I was finally strong armed by like Mike Torek and stuff to play Lexi, and I went through the Lexi grinder, played a ton of Lexi, was actually seeing success, winning a bunch of games, and having a terrible time. It was just a matter of like I don't like the hero. I understand where it's strong. I get it that I'm winning, but at a certain point, I would have much rather been playing Oldham. I would have much rather been playing Bravo or something that I really enjoy, even though knowingly it is a inferior hero to a degree, but shoring up that difference of deck power versus enjoyment and familiarity, if you're out there knowing the ins and outs something, that comfort level has to translate to something, right? And in your case, it's definitely success. Was there ever another consideration? I mean, I understand that like this is your thing, but did any other hero potentially creep into your mind?
You want to take a guess?
Is it Kano?
Of course it's Kano.
Well, I should group them together. I mean, between you and the other, Council of Wizards, it's you're like Gandalf the Bay, is what you are, kind of. That's kind of what I'm going to call you from now on. But you have seen incredible amounts of success on Iyslander. Most recently, beating Pro Tour winner, though the same Pro Tour that you forward was won by the player that you beat, which was Michael Fang.
Mm-hmm.
That
was a really good game.
It was an excellent game, and I'm wondering, do any of these victories that you see get a little extra juice on them, kind of when you're beating somebody of the ilk that is the sure thing, Michael Fang?
Yeah, I mean it does, but probably not for the reason you think. I don't go home and think, oh, I beat Michael Fang, right? I don't go home and think like, oh, I beat Michael Hamilton. I usually go home and think like, wow, I really liked that line I took in that game. This game was really tight, and this decision, I think, made a world of difference for me. I'm really glad that I ended up doing that. Like, I think in the Michael Fang game, I sit on Channel Lake Frigid for like 5 turns in my arsenal through like multiple 3-of-a-kinds or something. I just don't cast it. And I think that decision led to like a lot of success in the game for me. Because the 3-of-a-kinds ended up like not really adding a bunch of pressure based on like game state. He probably would have been able to cast arrows anyway, and like things like that. So it's not so much like, oh yeah, I beat Michael Fang. It's like, oh, I found a good line in a really tough game. That kind of stuff. That's what I take home.
Well, it's like a great thing to take home, because a lot of players will go home and just sit and lay with the sort of overlording, this haunting feeling of not I took this great line, it's I took this bad line, or I made this poor decision. Is this something that you worked on over time? And again, you play card games for a living, and eventually it's easy to get lost in that bad feeling of going home and having that dark cloud follow you of I can't believe I did this. And like I've been there, and it sucks, but I don't have the same stakes as someone like you, where or there are players out there whose careers depend on results. I am lucky enough that my career does not. I still play competitively. I like it, but it's easier for me to shake off a bad decision where, I may start in a rare field. Like, for example, the PTI that I did really well in, every time that I was playing a game, there was no stakes because I was doing it for fun. But as I kept winning, eventually it started to, creep in. And when I lost in the finals, I lost in the one thing that I had to actively push was trying to pick out elements within that entire tournament where I could have done something better. For example, and the one stupid thing is there's that one amulet or something in Monarch that provides Arcane Barrier 1. And I passed that thing like 3 times, and I ended up losing to 16 unblockable arcane damage. And in my head, I was like, if I had just drafted that, I would have probably won this game. But I can't sit on that, but it's easier for me to sweep under the rug because it doesn't matter. For you, was it a process? Was it something that you had to actively, discipline yourself to say, don't think about the bad, let's shift to the good. Recognize the bad, learn from it, but we want to dwell on the good things. Was that an active, adjustment you've had to make?
It's something I always make. It's something I do every single day. Like in your spot, obviously it's easy to be upset and be like, oh, I lost to 16 arcane damage, but like what really happened is you lost to 16 arcane damage and you learned how to beat it next time, right? Like now you're ready. Now you're going to see that card and be like, none of these are making my deck, but this card, that's a really good sideboard slot. Riot's systems are like LP based. So like in Legends of Runeterra, when you win a game, you win LP. That's like the ladder points or whatever. We like to call them learning points. So like instead of losing 20 LP, you spent 20 learning points. Right.
It's so
like,
wholesome.
Yeah, it's something that we like push a lot. And this is one of the reasons why I have so much success with things I like and do not have success with things I don't like, is that when I lose with a deck I like, I'm enjoying myself and I go, okay, here's like, I could have done this better and I could have done this better. I'm spending my learning points or whatever. But when I play, like, when I play this matchup again, how do I keep the game from going in that direction kind of stuff. But when I play a deck I don't like, I'm not spending learning points. I'm just losing LP. Because I'm not there to get better. I'm not there to learn. I'm just here to win. And if I don't win, I get upset because I'm gaining nothing. I'm just wasting time. Right. And so like, yeah, it's so much easier for me to get into that like learning mindset with something that I enjoy. And it's so difficult for me to do it with things I don't enjoy. Even now I'll get really tilted. If I'm playing things that I don't like when I was playing Lexi, things don't go your way, right? You draw an all red hand when your opponent has like Channel Lake Frigid. All you need is a 3-block and you draw all 2 blocks, you 3 of a kind and no arrows or whatever. And I'm just like, God damn it, right? Like this sucks. Whereas like if I'm playing Iyslander and that kind of thing happens, I go, yeah, that sucks. That sucks. How can I make this work for me, right? But like, yeah, when I'm playing a deck I don't like, I'm playing only to win. And when winning isn't happening, I get upset. I get frustrated. I don't know about you, but sorry, I'm just totally rambling.
No, dude, that's what we're here for. Trust me.
When I finish a tournament, because you usually finish by getting knocked out, right? You usually don't finish by winning. When I get knocked out, I'm really upset and bitter for like 20 minutes. I give myself like 20 minutes to be just a bitch about it. I'm just like, I'd had this and they had to hit that. And then all of my friends would ever go, yeah, I'm so unlucky. And then after 20 minutes, I'm just like over it.
Yeah.
But for that first 20 minutes, I get really upset.
But
does that happen to you?
Well, to me, it's like, it used to happen to me where, because a lot of my situations, and you can ask anybody who used to watch me stream, and everybody says they're the unluckiest player, but I would never bring attention to it that I was unlucky, and I'm like, I'm not going to be the one to have people try to seek out my unluckiness to evaluate whether me saying I'm the unluckiest person is true or not. I'm going to let them decide, and I'm just going to let it happen. And people would submit me decks and be like, this has been crushing it. And then I would be like, sure, let's play it. So I'd play it. This was a lot, especially in Gwent. And they'd be like, I'm trying. I'm a top 200 in the world player. I'm not a scrub. Like, I know what I'm doing. So why isn't the deck working? And everybody would say this, like, well, you just got exceptionally unlucky. I'm like, okay, let's roll it back and then go and go and go and go. And I would get upset because it's like, you could plan, you could practice, you could set yourself up, you can know all the matchups inside out, but if you don't draw your silver bullets that you purposely put into the deck to win particular matches, if you just don't draw them, that's not on you. Like, that's just bad luck, and it happens. And I've learned that, and this ties in so intimately with mental health, is that if I let myself get beat up by those losses, it bleeds into dangerous territories where I start to think of, maybe I don't deserve to win because I'm a bad person or I did something wrong. And I know that sounds absolutely asinine, and there's no correlation at all. But that's what depression does, is that you begin to think that you don't deserve to win. And it's the universe balancing itself and says, no, it's for something you've done somewhere else. It sounds stupid. It is whatever. But once I started to work through and work on my like mental health and depression issues, I've learned that no, it's not that. Sometimes these things happen, and I've started to open up the blinders to be like, yeah, but remember when I drew those 3 blues and a crippling crush when I really needed it? Or do you remember when, all I needed was and it's happened where I'm like, I'm doing an attack, I've got some spare resources, there's a card in the arsenal, I'm going to pitch a blue, cycle my arsenal and hope that I draw a red pummel, with Oldham to like really try to seek out, and it's happened, and it's like, wow, okay, those things all balance out. It's just I've worked on it prior, and if I had the capability to win big tournaments like Battle Hardens and whatever, it might be a little bit more, what's the term? It might be a little bit more nasty to deal with. But the fact is, it's like, I don't put those expectations. You win tournaments, like to a degree. I mean, you don't travel and go to these tournaments because you want to finish 17th. Like you go to these tournaments because you want to hit the top table, right? So it just feels difficult altogether when you have this pedigree of success and going 0-4 or having a bad luck draw. Like I guess to a degree, you have to lean on heroes that you like, because I would imagine losing with Iyslander is a much more pleasant experience than if you like Austin, who brought Reinar to the Blitz Battle Harden.
Just didn't get there.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. Let me ask you this then, because I wanted to sort of touch on this later, but I think it's worth talking about now. If Iyslander Living Legends and you go to Kano, because I'm assuming that's where you'll naturally land, and Kano's just awful or doesn't work out in a particular meta, do you just stop playing? And I say this because I think this is a legitimate concern that has been brought up by people like Dave Rude and whatever, and has seen it at his stores, is that when a hero Living Legends, the association that players have with particular heroes and their devotion to those heroes, they don't necessarily have an easy fallback, so they just quit. Do you think that that's something that is a concern?
Yeah, because like if Iyslander LL's out, the only reason I play Iyslander over Kano is I think it gives me a better chance of winning, and 2, I like to play long games. I think Kano's more fun, but I just like to play Wizard. And so if Iyslander rotates out and Kano's like unplayable, we're talking like D tier hero, right? I probably would just not play Flesh and Blood until there was some suitable replacement.
That is a dangerous sentiment. It happened with Prism.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Reed was telling me, he's like, when Prism rotated out, he's like, there's a few people who just showed up to the store and said, what can I get for all this Prism stuff? And they're like, oh, you want to trade? He's like, no, I'm out. Like,
just out.
Yeah. It's dangerous. It happened to like Dalen Mack. Dalen Mack kind of stepped away a little bit and such. And that's the threat now, because Iyslander won Battle Hardened Cincinnati, won Battle Hardened Chicago. It won the Calling Birmingham.
Can you just scooped? I think you could have just let Pablo win again.
Well, there's no LL points associated to the Realm Brawl yet. We don't know what next year is going to bring, but you're up against it, and this is a decision that you might eventually have to make. Now, you have a fallback plan, which is Kano, but I mean, this is a significant thing that LSS might have to address, and I don't know how they do it, because, like, for example, in Overwatch. And people who play Overwatch and are one tricks, if that hero gets nerfed and it's just no longer fun, people don't be like, oh, let's find something else. They just quit.
Yeah, it's tough when you have something that you like. Like Runeterra is my job, right? Like I'm full-time streamer, full-time YouTuber, whatever, for Legend of Runeterra. And like for the last 5-6 months, for the last like 3 months, what I've enjoyed playing has not been good. And that's been very, very tough on me. Because like normally I would just go play something else, but like I can't because this is my job. So I really struggled. I've struggled to like put out content. I've struggled to continue playing and competing and stuff. It's really tough. And I totally see that happening in Flesh and Blood as well. I think like as we get farther down the line, we'll have more things that are like secondary and tertiary heroes for various like classes and archetypes that we like currently don't have. But yeah, right now it's rough. Like Prism rotated. What are you supposed to do?
There's nothing similar to it. Yeah. Until Dromai. I mean, Dromai came out, and you can kind of like make an Irish Dromai build, which was really bad. It was terrible.
Really bad.
And I know a lot of people swore by it, and I said I will entertain the thought when I see it anywhere in any kind of competitive environment succeed. But I want to ask, because you brought this up, and I think that it's worth talking about, is that in the content creation sphere, this is a danger that a lot of people have to rely on, where if somebody doesn't like something, they can move on because their livelihood and their careers don't depend on it. When when Legends of Runeterra is just not good, or it's in a state where what you enjoy about it is bad and not succeeding. What I think a lot of people don't get is that as popular as you may be, or as likable as you are, it's very often difficult to take that viewership, take that popularity, and transfer it over to something else. You may be popular in Runeterra, but if you're averaging 1,000 viewers a stream on Runeterra, and you say, let's take this to Hearthstone, that becomes what, 200, 300 viewers? That
drops a lot.
That is an immediate. Imagine getting a 70% pay cut and saying, we don't know when this is going to go back. That's the kind of stresses and realities that occur. How do you get through that? Because there's a lot of content creators who their struggles are like the startup of building that, but the maintenance of it too sometimes means that you have to go through the trenches and play games that you are not enjoying at a particular time.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm very fortunate. When I switch games, I keep about, I've been playing TFT lately, a decent chunk on stream, and I keep about 50% of my viewership, which, if you're not involved in the streaming world, you'd go oh my God, you lose 50% of your viewership. But if you are involved in the streaming world and you've seen people who only stream one game switch, you'd go, oh my God, you keep 50% of your viewership. Right. So I am very fortunate in that if I really need to, if I'm oh my God, this is just not doing it for me. I'm tired of this. I can't do this anymore. Or I just want to make a switch for whatever reason that I can. It would be difficult, but I can, and that's a pretty big weight off my shoulders. I was really worried about that for a while. I was what happens if Runeterra goes down? Would people want to watch me anymore if I switch to something else? And I think I've had success in Flesh and Blood, and people like to see my Flesh and Blood stuff. People tell me that they watch my Runeterra stuff, even though they don't play Runeterra. When I play TFT, people still enjoy that, even if they don't play TFT. I like to think that people watch me because they like me, right? But that's what every streamer wants to say. So I am hopeful that I could make it somewhere else if I needed to. And that takes a lot of stress off my shoulders.
It's good, and exactly. It's the fact that a lot of those applicable skills, I always tell people that reputation is the number one currency in any kind of content creation. You could have a flash in the pan success, but if you're a piece of shit, people are eventually going to find out, and then it comes back to haunt you. It translates well. It sort of converts well reputation from one thing to another, and I think that that's something that you've cultivated very well. And I know that I don't say you're careful about it, because when you say that, there's sort of an insinuation that you're trying to hide something.
Manipulating.
Yeah, exactly. There's something behind the curtain, but in reality, there isn't. And I want people to understand that MajiinBae in person is just MajiinBae on stream and whatever. And that's something that I tried to make sure that I was hammering down when I started this journey many years ago. Is I don't want to play a role. I just, like me or hate me, and I have both. I mean, it's just, I just want to be myself and live or die by that. I want to talk quickly about Iyslander and Iyslander's dominance, because I just rattled off the past 4 tournament wins that she's pulled off. What do you attribute to this dominance? Because it's not like she's got anything new. There's no new toys. I mean, is it just the fact that Oldham kind of wheeled out and there's one less super defensive stalwart hero for you to deal with? How has this, this resurgence of Iyslander, what do you attribute to it?
The Oldham matchup actually quite good for Iyslander. One of its better matchups. So that was kind of a blow, losing that. Wizard loves the Sea Guardian, as I'm sure you're aware, being a Bravo player, an Oldham player, right? It's honestly, if you look at the actual percentages of how Iyslander's doing matchup to matchup wise, it's fine. It's just fine. But the people winning these events, Mezzo, Rhea, and I are super specialists. This is all we do, right? We both picked Iyslander and we play Iyslander, and that's it. And the thing about Iyslander is, I had a really good conversation with someone about this. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Michael Fang, actually. Maybe not. Maybe he's watching this and going, mm-mm. But I'm pretty sure it was Michael Fang. And we were talking about it, and we were talking about Iyslander and how if you if like with Iyslander, it's really, really tough because if you misplay against Iyslander, you'll lose in 7 turns and you won't even know how. Right. And it's the same thing with like playing Iyslander. It's like if you misplay with Iyslander, you miss 6 damage here and you didn't set up for your kill turn correctly and you took extra damage than you should have. But the way you misplay, it's not very obvious to you immediately. It can be something like you arsenaled the wrong card and it didn't gain you as much tempo as possibly something else could. Because a lot of Iyslander stuff isn't just damage, right? You have things like Channeling Frigid, you have like Cold Snap Polar Blast. You have a lot of things that like their value isn't immediately apparent. And so if you decided to send an attack instead of blocking a little extra and Cornet's peeking and you take a lot of extra damage because of it, well, was it worth it? Like these are the kind of things that you only find out through like a massive amounts of games. And so I think the Icelanders that you're seeing winning these tournaments have put in these massive amounts of games. Obviously, there's a little bit of like variance. It is a card game, so like we're just spiking, right? You know, like I won the tournament. I'm not an idiot. I know how card games work. I had to get lucky to win a tournament. You have to be lucky and play well to win a tournament. That's how it is. So like I don't think you'll continue to see Iyslander win every single event. I think you'll continue to see Iyslander do well in the hands of experienced pilots, because it's very difficult to navigate some of these matchups if you don't have the experience, particularly the Lexi matchup. Very difficult. So I don't think she's like super duper dominant or anything. I don't think she's the best deck in the room, but I think people who really, really put a lot of the time into her will see success.
That is what I want to kind of bring up here too. And this is what I have this discussion a lot. When people see me on the floor of tournaments or whatever, a lot of the time they ask me, especially now, about Iyslander. I got asked about Iyslander. What do you think about Iyslander and Iyslander being OP? And I'm always first to sort of snuff out the fires of people saying she's OP, she's broken, she's this, she's that. Because what that does is it takes away a lot of the credit to the people who put the work in with the hero to win with the hero. And it's a complex hero. It's a very layered and calculated hero. It's one that doesn't offer much margin of error. You tried to teach it to me. We sat for hours of you explaining to me how to play it. And I like to think that I'm a pretty good student at something. And at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? There's way too many opportunities and pitfalls for me to just lose a game off of what I think is an insignificant decision. I blocked with card A, I should have blocked with card B, or I should have not blocked at all. And that one little micro decision, like you said, cascades throughout the match where I now missed 3 or 4 damage that I could have, like you said, put my opponent in a range where I could have Storm Striders, nodes, do all this stuff and just blast them down. Do you think that there is this, I wouldn't call it disrespect, but there's this lack of appreciation for people like yourself, like Rhea, who put the time in to win with these heroes and to put so that when they go to these tournaments on their specialty heroes that are not easy outs. Like Iyslander's not a hero that you can just say, here's my turn, this is my plan, I'm doing this much damage, because you don't know. There's uncertainty in terms of how they're going to manipulate and disrupt your own turn. A lot of this goes to the experience of the person piloting the deck. And when I hear somebody say that the hero's OP, that to me it just discredits the person who's playing it. Do you ever feel like at a certain point you're like, yeah, but I like put in the same amount of hours I did, and then talk to me about it?
Yeah, that happens every now and then. I get the one that gets me is when like you make a good play or you play a really good game and then like someone, be it your opponent or someone watching, just says like, oh, he just got lucky, or like, oh, your opponent just got unlucky. You're like, well, come on, man, like maybe I was fortunate or whatever, but like it feels like, it does feel like that. It feels like they're just discrediting your accomplishment or whatever. And that happens. I try not to let it get to me too much. It usually doesn't. I think Iyslander is kind of one of those heroes that like, it's not immediately apparent how much consideration goes into like various random things. Like maybe you arsenaled Aether Hail when you needed to arsenal Cold Snap and you lost the game because of it. And like, it's not immediately apparent why one of those would be better than the other. Maybe you just sequenced it wrong, or honestly, just sequencing it correctly. It doesn't look like anything when you're watching it. If you don't like really, really understand what's going on with Iyslander or with your opponent's deck, the way you sequence your Frostbite, whether or not you hold it for another turn, whatever, like these are smaller decisions, but they really add up. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't see it. And you just go, oh, they're just casting their card. And that's not how it works.
That's how I felt when you were teaching it to me. And I remember taking it to a stream, and at a certain point, I just realized, I'm like, okay, they do their thing, respond to their action, and go. But at my same time, I'm like, if I respond too early, then they can retailer their turn to be, to change their plans. But if I wait a little bit and Frostbite them with one float, that means that they're not going to hit their Rosetta Thorn or whatever. So it is definitely a matter of Iyslander being a hero that requires a lot of repetition and a lot of practice, because you're playing within so many greasy margins that other heroes don't have access to. I play Guardian, dude. Like, my biggest problem is making sure that I have a 2-to-1 blue to red ratio. Otherwise, Clark Jensen is going to message me and tell me I'm an idiot. I say that with all love and respect. Clark is somebody who has taken a lot of his own personal time to make sure that I represent the hero, not like an absolute circus, but I love him to death. He's awesome. But that's the one thing. And like a lot of times that whole conversation of OP versus strong or whatever, the aggression in people's voices or their tweets or whatever when it comes to when Iyslander wins an event or does well or they lose to it, to me it's like, okay, are you mad that the hero is overtuned and overpowered, or are you mad that somebody better than you hasn't figured it out yet to beat it? Like, is that the whole thing? Because good players, if it was OP, it would be Starvo meta where everybody was playing it or the remedy to it, but that's not the case. It's just out there. It's not overpopulated. It's not even sometimes in the top 5 most represented heroes at a tournament. It's just that those who do represent it have put the time in. And if you're not willing to put the time in to A, learn it and win with it, or B, play against it adequately, then that's on you. That's not on LSS to ban cards as training wheels for you to learn how to ride on your own. But if there were bans, first of all, do you feel like the hero is slightly overtuned? Like, you mentioned that it's not the strongest deck in the room, but are there cards or things that need to get addressed for it, or is it just a matter of just saying, look, just learn to play against it?
Yeah. No, I do not think anything needs to get banned about it.
Well, you say that because you keep winning with it. Like,
yeah,
there's some bias there. You have to recognize. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, no, it's my deck. I don't want things to get banned. We've already gotten hit with bans. It's like, it feels. I like to think I'm a really good judge of like when things feel too powerful, and I can be like, oh, this deck is the nuts, right? Or like, this is too good. And Iyslander doesn't feel too powerful. It feels very good. It feels like top 3 hero, but I wouldn't say it's the most powerful. It is quite strong. There are some matchups that are very good for you. Like the Bravo matchup is like very good for you. But then on the flip side, like I have a Bravo local. His name's Patrick. Patrick took second at the World's Calling on Bravo. Patrick and I played probably like 50 times throughout various events, and I win the vast majority of the time. So much so that he like wrote off Iyslander matchup completely. He's like, I can't beat this. I just can't beat it. And then in his calling run, he smashed through like 5 Icelanders in a row. And that was shocking to both of us because we both thought, based on our practice, this matchup's unwinnable for Bravo. How do you ever win? Right? And then he just like kept winning. And what he told me later was he's like, you just play the matchup differently than like other people were playing the matchup. And it made it so much easier for me. And that's the kind of thing that like makes Iyslander good. Right, it's like knowing how to. I also don't want people to hear this and be like, "Wow, he's just sitting here tooting his own horn, thinking he's so cool."
Wow.
But that's the kind of thing that makes Iyslander good. Like, you need to know out the gate how you need to play a matchup and like what's really important and where you need to sequence and what your opponent can do at all times. And I think a lot of the other heroes aren't quite like that. Some of them really can be. But like when you're playing the Iyslander Dromai matchup or the Iyslander Lexi matchup, like you need to know exactly what your opponent can do all the time. And that's the people who know that are the people seeing success with Iyslander. For the most part, over the last 4 weeks, like people who don't play Iyslander aren't playing Iyslander. The people who play Iyslander are Iyslander players. I think that will change as we get into Nats now that Iyslander has been like consistently seeing success. But But that was kind of my takeaway. You know, like Ray has been playing Iyslander for literally forever. This Arcane Iyslander build is not something that's like just popped up. Ray has been playing this forever. I like every month I just check to see what Mezzo is playing. You know, like for the last year or whatever.
Well, that's the other aspect of it is that there's two different builds right now. There's there's sort of the Bulllander that Michael Hamilton made famous and refined for so long, the one that you play. There's Ray's build, which is this arcane blasting you kind of you're unprepared for it. Whereas you may come in with AB 2 or 3, which can kind of get you there, but when it's just these consistent like red ice bolts, and you can't blast through it. Is there a better build, or in terms of, in your opinion, or is there? I mean, there's definitely merits to both. Rhea has won 2 tournaments with it. You've won a tournament with it as well. Bulllander has won 2 tournaments with it. Which are there builds that operate and are more effective in certain metas, or do both, or is it just a matter of preference?
It's a bit of a preference. I think Rhea would agree with me. I think. Feel free to sound off in the comments if you don't agree. I think most players would agree that Bulllander is the objectively better build. Like in a vacuum, Bulllander is the better deck. Arcane Iyslander is more what I would call exploitive, where it's looking to exploit certain weaknesses in the format and in various decks, right? Things like Icebind, Encase, Warmongers are very, very good against like Alexia Azalea format. But if you were playing against Oldhim or Bravo with AB3, they don't care about your Encase, right? It's just a bad card. Whereas like Bulllander is really able to just do a more powerful thing more consistently. So I think Bullander's the better deck. I think in certain times, Arcane Iyslander can be much better positioned, if that makes sense. So it can be the better pick, even though it might be less powerful on paper, is how I look at it. Right now, I'm a big Bulllander fan. I think you were there when I like built Bulllander. I was mauling that I couldn't play Wizard as much as I wanted to, and that Iyslander wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. And then it was at US Nats, and I saw Michael Hamilton on the feature match, and I saw him cast Wounded Bull, and I was like, oh my God, it was like a eureka moment in my mind. I was like, holy shit, my man's figured it out. And I went to Tannen Grace, and I was like, Tannen, get me this deck list. And then I went and like bought all the cards that day on site so I could play side events with it. I've loved Bulllander ever since. I think like you can prepare for Arcane Iyslander and like really beat it if you want to. I think Bulllander will always be able to outpunch you sometimes. Like, I don't think if you built a deck to beat Bulllander, I think Bulllander would still beat you sometimes. If you built a deck to beat Arcane Iyslander, I think Arcane Iyslander would win much less.
I think it's easier just to sort of slow down something. You walk in with like AB 3 or 4, it's going to be a lot easier to get through. Aside from that, do you think that, like you mentioned, that don't touch Iyslander at this point because... And I tend to agree. Yeah, well, please. I mean, she's already got a bunch of things banned, like Amulet's banned. What else is banned for
Hypothermia?
Yeah, Hypothermia. Like, I mean, those are strong cards. The Amulet, I guess, is just sort of a helpful thing. But I think people are just fed up of Ice and fed up of having their game plans kind of, screwed up. It's the same. You see this in every single card game, the same kind of criticism when a deck messes with your game plan. Then you get pissed off because you think you could walk in there and solitaire your game plan and not have to worry about it. It's like, no, it's a 2-player game, and this isn't, Pokemon, this isn't Lorcana. There's interaction on both sides of the field at all turns. Iyslander just happens to be the best at doing so. Kato, it's like gets it all done in one pocket. So you sit there and you just watch as the world burns around you, where Iyslander, I have a plan, I have the exact amount of resources I want to use. Like, it's to the point where sometimes I've got like this beautiful hand. I'm like, do I even Terra Sunder here? Like, or am I wasting my turn? So it's a really uncomfortable position to be in, but it doesn't mean it's illegal. It doesn't mean it's overpowered. It means the players who have put the time in to understand the matchups. Going back to how we started this conversation, where you're talking about success often, is derived from preparation, but part of that preparation is of your opponent's lists and having a plan into it. Do you have a matchup that you are not comfortable with?
I don't play Azalea. I don't play against Azalea. There's no Azaleas locally. I've only played the matchup once. So, like, if I went into that matchup, I'm not super comfortable. I could kind of figure it out. But, like, yeah, not super comfortable. I played Iyslander Lexi, like, a lot against some, like, very strong players. So even though that matchup's not good, I feel more comfortable in it. It is uncomfortable because, like, if you mess up, they just kill you. And that sucks. But, like, it's kind of comfortable ground. I don't want to play against Azalea.
So you're saying Iyslander is not broken. It's not overpowered. Maybe the players playing them are overpowered. Are there any heroes in your mind that are quote unquote broken, or is there any interaction or card that you feel is just needs some sort of
much.
Yeah.
I actually think that everything's in a really good spot right now. I think there's like a lot of things you can play. I think Lexi's the best deck by like a full step, but it's a card game. There's going to be best decks. And I think formats where there are a best deck is actually better than an objectively balanced format, which is probably just the hottest take on the planet.
That's pretty
But,
spicy.
I know. So we recently had an objectively balanced format in Legend of Runeterra, and it was just the most boring thing on the planet. It was just a bunch of bad decks. Like, it was not fun.
Like, you gotta say, like, at a certain point, it's nice to see a Katsu on stream or something like that.
Yeah.
But when they get outclassed, like, at a certain point, the upstarts that are out there kind of crushing. For example, at Pro Tour Baltimore, when Team Poland showed up, a lot of them were on Katsu, and I was like, what? Why? And they're like, well, you know what? Sometimes it's just fun to play Katsu, and we think it's a good deck. We don't think it's the best deck. And, you know, like, there were some out there that were doing good things. We've seen, I think it was one of the Battle Hardens had a bunch of Katsus. Was it Calling Birmingham? I think maybe have had one that made it to the top 8. I mean, there's something there, but you're saying, if I'm understanding this correctly, that good metas will have these sort of spearhead heroes that everything falls in line behind?
I think so. Yeah. Or a triangle. That tends to be very popular as well. Like a matchup triangle, right? This beats this, loses to this, whatever. I think that like really helps because that's when you get to see this off the wall stuff. Or like Team Poland brought Katsu because they're like, yeah, some of our matchups aren't great. We don't beat Iyslander and we don't beat Oldhim, but man, are we like really teched into Lexi. And I think that's cool. I think that's fun. It breeds innovation. When everything's mid, like nothing's exciting. The new deck this week or whatever is just another mid deck. And that's like not very fun. You beat some stuff, you lose to some stuff, whatever. And yeah, I actually really like formats like this. And you'll see like decks tech against Lexi and Lexi will tech back, right? Like right now the thing is like Lexis are playing Trench because they don't want to lose to Warmongers and Encase and stuff like that. But now, like, do you even run those cards? If the Lexis are going to run Trench anyway, do you even bring them? That kind of stuff, right? The meta's adapting, and then something else will come out that's good against Lexi, and so Lexi has to adapt against that. But because it adapted against that, now it's weak against that, and we get this kind of like natural progression of a format that I really enjoy.
There was, for example, when Pablo put in Feindel's Fighting Spirit Blue in Bravo, and the logic behind it being, and I asked him, I said, is this, like, to me, I think that this is just a matter of being able to shore up a Lexi match wherein they're coming at you with 5 spots. If you're blocking 6 over 5, you're not getting any change back.
Inefficient.
Yeah, but if you're blocking 5 and getting a life back, like that's full value. And then I used that list, and then when I played it in the Super Armory at Kayfabe Cards, I played against a Katsu player where I was down to 1, and then I realized they're coming at me with a Kodachi. I can block that first Kodachi, gain a life, and then the second Kodachi I can give a free wheel to that can hit me. It's like there's so much utility, and that comes again alongside just innovation and whatnot. That is because there is a deck that needs to be beaten. But kind of what you're saying also to a degree is when you're just this triangle of this beats this beats this, at a certain point the entire tournament becomes gem roulette, which is a popular term, where you're like, well, like when I show up to a tournament on Oldhim or Bravo, if I find a dash that just wants to buckle down and pistol me to death, I'm like, this is a 90-10, man. Yeah, like no matter what, if this is a good, but at the same time, I'm not going to devote three sideboard slots to like smashing good times because I'm just afraid of this matchup. No, it's not. That's not the case. Do you feel like this is that is a threat to sort of the integrity of a competitive meta, where if it becomes a triangle, then a lot of these matchups are decided before you even sit down. It's just you get your pairing and you say, what hero are you? And you realize you're like, it's going to take a Christmas miracle to figure this out.
I think that is a threat in this format. I don't think it is. I think we're in a really good spot where like there's a lot of decks. Some are better into others than other things, but they all can beat each other. Like if you look at my top 8 matches for the Brawl, it's just what people would consider bad matchup, worst matchup, right? It went draw my Lexi. And I did manage to pull it out. And so like, yeah, Lexi is my worst matchup, but it's winnable. This is a playable matchup. And I kind of feel this way. This might be super hot take. I kind of felt this way about Charvo.
You say Charizard?
Yes, yeah. God, I did it again. Starvo Chain Prism is that you could play any of the 3 decks, and any of the 3 decks could beat any of the 3 decks. It was like basically a 45-55 around the triangle. Sure. I feel like maybe a little bit more exaggerated in various points of the meta, but like that, it's a bit of a bad example because those 3 decks were like clear above everything else. But I think that kind of stuff is good I think that's a good format because you have a deck that maybe I really love Chain, right? And then like 1 week Starvo's been putting up some really good results. So there's going to be there's less, maybe we'll see a rise in Prism players. So I want to tech my deck to be better against Prism. And then the next week I want to tech it to be better against the Mirror and then against Starvo. And like you get to pick the matchups that you want to win. And then maybe there's a dark horse that comes out that crushes 2 of the matchups, but isn't very good into 1. Like I think that's a more fun meta for me than a meta where I'm playing a bunch of poopy 6 out of 10 decks.
That's the other thing I wanted to talk about real quickly, which was MajiinBae-isms, which I think are awesome, and I love to use these whenever I'm casting a MajiinBae match. I always like to really kind of set up this thing. I'm like, like I was talking to MajiinBae about preparing for something, and we're discussing, the importance of certain cards. Make it sound real professional, and then when I actually quote you, it just falls off the rails because I'm be like, well, he really deemed this card, and I quote booty cheeks. And
yeah, this card is absolute butt.
Yes, it is just things like that. It's like, oh, why is this in this list? Oh, well, because if they play Uvia, I have to deal with it, and she's got a big dumper, and it's like, I'm gonna throw some at you, and I want you to kind of give me the context of what the actual term means and use it in a phrase. Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah, okay. We'll just give it a shot.
All right. So the first one was booty cheeks. So
booty cheeks,
if a card or a play is booty cheeks, what is it? What does that mean?
So there's a couple different like variations. There's like booty cheeks, there's cheeks, and then there's straight cheeks. That one's the worst one. Cheeks, ass. If something's ass, it's bad. So yeah, I have told people, I'd be like, you can't make that play, bro. That is straight up cheeks, and they're like, what the fuck are you saying?
That's look, I am a communicator by trade, so part of that is understanding whom I'm communicating with or communicating for. So when I'm casting a match, I got to get into the Majin-Bae. So there's cheeks, booty cheeks, and then straight cheeks.
Straight up cheeks.
All right. So give me use it in a sentence when something is straight up cheeks.
All right. Yeah. Brought this new deck to the tournament. Just got slaughtered by Lexi. I think Warmonger's Recital, straight up cheeks. Just bad. It's unplayable.
Okay. Another one is the use of let's go. And let's go. Yeah, we see that everywhere, but I always attribute it to something that you would say. Give us a scenario where that would be used and what it means.
Okay. You activate Kano. You're behind. You hit Tome of Aetherwind off the top. You look back at your buddies and you give them a let's go. Actually, I picked that up from somewhere. I can't remember where, but it was some like video movie something where people would just go let's go, and I just copied it because I thought it was so funny.
Works out. It's pretty good. I also think I heard you say that when we went out for we were looking for a place for ramen and they were still taking, or I forgot what it was. It was something like that, but
boba. They had Oh, no, maybe I did it. I did it when we walked into a ramen place. I don't think were there, but we walked into a ramen place and they served boba. And
Oh.
I said, "Yo, boba, let's go."
Okay, that one works. The reference of Big Dumper. Can you give us a little
Yeah.
context of that from the perspective of Flesh and Blood, please?
Yeah. So big dumper translates directly to gigantic ass, which means things that have a lot of health or are very defensive in nature.
Okay, so somebody drops a Tomultai and it stays on the board. You don't have a popper. Give us a little Big Dumper, sentence here.
Yeah. How much health does Tomultai have? Is it a 5/5?
I think it's a 5/5. Might be a 5/5.
5/5. Yeah. And I look at the scar for a scar in my hand. It's not quite enough because Tomultai's got such a big dumper. Yeah. Puts it out of range.
Oh God. Okay. Perfect. The next thing I want to do.
Help.
No. This is perfect. This is actually I'm writing a book about esports linguistics, and I just want to make sure that I have all of my addendum, all of the glossaries complete. Perfect. This one's going to be for our tier 3 Patreon exclusive. So if you haven't already, go to patreon.com/instantspeed. Give me your money. But we're going to ask MajiinBae, who is probably one of the self-described top 5 Iyslander players
I did not do that.
to ever exist.
That was not me.
That was me. But if you want to hear MajiinBae's top 3 tips to playing Iyslander, make sure that you go to patreon.com/instantspeed and support the podcast at tier 3. I want to ask you just some questions from the community, a couple that rolled in. One of which is from Greg, aka at Darth Prentice, wonderful human being in the community who helps a lot of us content creators. So throw Greg some love. Asking, I would love to know if this was what you quote unquote wanted to be when you grow up, or did you study finance law or something and said, screw it, we're going to play some more Legends of Runeterra. How did this come to be?
I wasn't really introduced to card games until 18 years old. I graduated high school, was introduced to Magic the Gathering. But I always wanted to play the game See the World. Their old catch line.
Sure.
I was like, oh my God, if I could be a pro card gamer, this is what I would want to do. But then when I hit the Pro Tour, I realized it wasn't really feasible to be just a pro gamer. And I actually did a bunch of other stuff. And then I was finishing up my pilot's license to go fly for airlines. When COVID happened and I couldn't get lessons because it was during COVID. And my friends for years had been pushing me to try streaming, but I never watched streams, not even one. So I didn't really know what that entailed. And then I did really well and won Legends of Runeterra tournament, the first seasonals or whatever. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll give streaming a try. And then I won the next seasonals. And I just kind of went, let's see how this goes. And I've been doing it ever since.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. Next question from Travis Vice Dragons for Majin. As someone who plays a lot of Legends of Runeterra alongside Flesh and Blood, how do you feel about James's vision of never including an online client for the game? Do you think that an official client online would benefit Flesh and Blood for the long run or hurt it? This is a topic that I think will never be put to bed until there is essentially an online client that is developed, if that would actually happen. And I think of this from the perspective of we have an online client. It's Talishar. It's just not as refined, polished, as sparkly, or official, as it were, but it gets the job done. So where do you stand on this? Is this a situation where Flesh and Blood is legitimately just, proverbially, you know what I mean, leaving money on the table? Proverbially leaving money on the table? Or is this a situation where at a certain point, sticking to your guns and that integrity is more valuable?
So I think I like the way this question was phrased because it's how do you feel about James' vision? It's not do you think Flesh and Blood would be better?
Sure.
If it had an online client. Because I think if we had an online client for Flesh and Blood, it would be much more popular. I talk about Flesh and Blood all the time to people who play Legends of Runeterra in various online games. And the biggest sentiment I hear is I would play it if there was an actual online client. It's just much easier. I don't have time to go out and play even local tournaments really very often. So an online client would be very, very nice for me. And I have Talishar and I play Talishar when I get the time. And I do think it'd be much more popular. Do I think it'd be better? That's the question, because James's vision is everyone comes together, everyone plays the game. And that is how it feels. I'm much more entrenched with the Flesh and Blood community than I am even the majority of the Legends of Runeterra community or the Magic the Gathering community when I played that.
Sure.
Right? Because like everything's in person. If you want to play the game, you have to go play the game with these people, and you get together with these people, right? Like you and I are friends, and all the kayfabe guys, and like a bunch of other people, because we come out to these events and we play. If there was an online client, most of you wouldn't know me, because I would play the online client, I'd show up to the tournament, and I'd go home. And that's so. Do I think it'd be better? I don't know. You'd have more players.
Yeah, that's like, I guess we're kind of transcending outside of the scope of things like meta and like commercial success, because I think, no, but I'm like, but it's part of it, and I think that it's an obvious yes. It would be better for the game from a commercial standpoint, from a growing player base standpoint. But then what suffers? What suffers is a lot of the aspects that are not tangible and that are not directly translating into revenue or financial success for the game. For example, exactly what you said. If there was an online client, I would be jamming that and no longer going to armories, or even at a certain degree, probably even attending certain events if there were online versions of them. So what would suffer? Well, again, our friendship, and like that sounds whatever, but at the same time, that sounded horrible.
That's pretty bad.
That's not what I meant. But
friendship would suffer.
Our friendship would suffer, and I like how I immediately like, yeah, well, who cares? Like, I could play the game quickly and earn gems or whatever. But I think the other casualty of that is the fact that right now we have these regional metas that keep things in flux. If everybody had this gigantic melting pot where people were all jamming their games into one client, everybody is subject to the same meta. And those things get solved in a heartbeat, and then it becomes not just stale, but tournament scenes would be different, playtesting and practice. It's no longer a matter of it. There's a reason why the top 8s, even though they were all won by Icelanders, were very different in terms of representation. It's because every little pocket of Earth here has their own ideas and regional metas that they have to prepare for and address. As soon as you have an online client, you're basically turning those little pockets into one gigantic cauldron, and whatever the flavor that comes out of there is what everybody's going to have to digest, and that can also suffer. But James's vision of like, let's all get together and have a good time, I think that it's the truth, because look, I love, kayfabe and Job and everything, but Salt Lake City is not somewhere that I would otherwise have any interest in traveling to. It's a really nice looking city, but it is a horrible place to travel to from like a logistics standpoint, and you're wedged between like Denver and Vegas that are probably better options. But again, we do it because we love the game, and we do it because this is how we see our friends. I tell people, I'm like, my friends live all over the world. I go to these events, to work, but to me, it's also a wonderful opportunity to maintain these friendships, like the one I just threw in the garbage with you.
With that horrible metaphor.
Yeah, whatever.
If I could choose, if I could flip a switch and we'd have a fully functioning, well-built online client, I would flip the switch. But there are problems with it.
It's kind of like, I would love to see what 6 months of it would do.
Yeah.
Because we don't have, like, for example, I'm really curious. Like, Magic always had like MTGO, right? Or they've had it for a long time. There's been
like
an
1990 something.
Exactly. So I want to know what some of these games would look like without an online client. Like how that would change. Would Magic be different when it was just regional? And then there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this who played in the mid 90s to early 2000s, where people weren't necessarily online jamming games and understanding metas. So it was more pocket and regional. But that's what we live in now. Because as much as Talishar has made progress in terms of gaining new players and expanding player bases, they're still, at their peak was like still under 100 games concurrently being played, whereas what Magic Arena is at any given time, there's like thousands of games being decided. Like, it's unreal. So it's crazy. It's crazy in that regard, and I'm kind of happy that we don't, but like you, I think I'm curious to see what like 6 months of an online polished client would do to the culture.
It might be a selfish decision. I would want to have one because I would want one.
Well, at the same time, I mean, like I stream Talishar. Talishar has made incredible strides to be more polished, more better presented, but at the same time, it's still this tiny group of hardworking people that are doing this selflessly to improve the community, and I thank them immensely. But it's just, imagine if, like, I don't know, if LSS just hired this, paid millions of dollars to get this done, which I don't even think that's how it would work. I'm pretty sure it would be a developer saying, we're going to pay you for the license to do this game, and, kind of walk away. But would it be successful? Would it be like this Lorcana-sized complete, like, shit show? Like, who knows? At the end of the day, I don't like Lorcana. That's right. All right. Caleb, man, I love you so much. One of the things that I always tell people when it comes to you is that you are one of the most genuine, humble, just selfless people that I've ever met in this industry, where you like who you like, and you're not out there to push any kind of agenda or anything. You're not out there trying to, push your channel or push your likes or your views or whatever when you're at an event or whatever. You just want to hang out with the people that you like, doing the things you love, and that's all there is to it. And that's something that I remember when we were at, was that Nats or something? We were sharing a hotel room, and it just, like, there's so many different things going on. At the end of the day, you're just like, do you just want to go hang out in the hotel room, like, get a couple drinks and just jam cards and watch TV? And I was like, yes. And it had nothing to do with who was doing what, who you wanted to be seen with, or who you want to hang out. It was literally, let's just do what we want to do. And I really appreciate that and respect that about you.
Thanks, man. That's really nice of you to say.
No worries. Okay, now you say something nice about me. No, I'm kidding. That's not what this is about. But
you just sit there and stare at me. You're like,
and it's like, when you're out there and somebody's just like, oh, how'd you do at the tournament? And all you know is that it's just because you're like, I could literally say I had my hands sawed off, and then they'll be like, oh, cool. But here's how I did. Like, yeah, exactly. Oh, it's casual 4-0. Casual 4-0. It's like, cool, got it, awesome. No, that wasn't the case. I just love you, man. And it's great when I get to see you, even when it is just watching One Piece blindly with no context.
Oh my God, that was interesting, wasn't it?
That in itself is probably a highlight, because I think that as fascinating and as joyful as it was for me to consume that episode of Gear 5 One Piece, was it Luffy, that guy's name?
Was, yeah.
Yeah. I think that there was more joy in Austin Yost's face knowing that I was there, about to get my brain riddled with anime bullets and Left 4 Dead on the bottom. But
I'm trying to, like, explain what was going on, but, like, really quickly before we miss anything was so funny.
Yeah, he's like, okay, now listen. Now these 5 guys, they run the whole thing, and there's a wall that goes through the entire ocean. But if they eat this fruit and touch water, they die. Okay, look, I'm just trying to figure out the first thing, which was this villain who looked like a mini putt clown, listening to some chick play the lute, who then turned into a fireworm and ate him. And their eyes are the size of cantaloupes. I have no idea what the hell's going on. But meanwhile, this is the biggest thing to ever happen to anime ever, and I'm here for this. So let's go. Let's go.
Fun experience. Let's go.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say it was straight cheeks, but I wouldn't say it wasn't necessarily cheeks. But the entire scenario was pretty let's go altogether. All right. Anything else before we go? Where can we plug your pluggables?
YouTube, Twitch, MajiinBae. It's MajiinBae LOR on Twitch. I'm on Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. To our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards, go to kayfabecards.com to get all your singles, sealed product for Flesh and Blood and beyond. Be who you want to be at Kayfabe Cards. To our sponsors, our supporters, rather, at patreon.com. Thank you so much. It's incredibly humbling to know that you guys like me enough to throw money in a paper shredder just for me. So that makes me happy. I appreciate you all. And I also want to say that there is some Flesh and Blood merch, some instant speed merchandise at Very Good Embroidery. The link's in the comments here. If you want to get a shirt or whatever, I made sure that they're not like exorbitantly priced, so you can get like a t-shirt shipped to you for like under $25 or something like that. So hoodies are like $35 or $40. I don't know.
Pretty reasonable.
Yeah,
Is that playmat on there that you showed me?
The playmat is coming. The playmat is coming. I ordered.
That one's really good.
They're pretty sweet. I ordered like 20 of them, and they are going to be coming by soon. So as soon as I get a hold of those, I'll be able to make that happen as well. But yeah. Caleb Van
you
Patten,
for
ladies and
having me
gentlemen. Oh, it's my
Jules.
pleasure. Jules Van Patten, aka MajiinBae, ladies and gentlemen. And that does it for another episode of Instant Speed Podcast. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. We'll see you next time on ISP.
Well, I work